This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Daniel Ushida, growth hacker at Growth Tribe Academy. Daniel, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Thank you, Artyom. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So, raise your hand. I know I cannot see you, but still, if you ever have an experience, like you look at weekly reports for your app engagement and you see it's worse than you would hope, then you would expect to get the engagement you're hoping for, but you have no idea why. What's the problem? So one of the possible culprits could be an issue with the app user interface. Something is spoiling user experience, and hence people don't use your app the way that you would hope. Even if you've never had this experience before, chances are you may in the future. So I've got Daniel to give you some practical advice on what to do. But as always on this show, let's talk about you, Daniel, first. Tell us about yourself, please.
Sure, definitely. So as you mentioned, my name is Daniel. I'm a growth hack trainer and also growth hacker at Growth Tribe Academy, Dutch Scale Up. So basically, my job as a trainer is to help individuals and companies to promote growth in their businesses. So I help startups, people who are already like in their product market fit phase to scale their business, but also huge corporates to scale some new ideas, right? And this also goes through helping them in developing ideas and most of the times as well, apps. But I've been as well an entrepreneur myself before becoming a trainer here at Growth Tribe. Back in my business, I had a lot of experience working at the education and also consultancy industries. Back in my home country. And also one of my most successful business was an app that I developed back there where I connected entrepreneurs around the country so they could help each other in their business challenges. So basically a P2P solution where entrepreneurs, they could post their challenges, help themselves and get value out of this. So also like I quickly scaled this app back there, went to other countries such as Chile. And now I'm here to help other companies as well to scale their businesses.
Great. So you had the first experience being an entrepreneur, you're having your own app, and you have the experience in education. So both these things allow you to be the growth hacker trainer. It's a good combination. Can you talk about the evolution in the app user experience? I mean, it's been more than 10 years since the app revolution took off with the advent of the first app store by Apple back in summer, I guess, 2008. So what was the standard back then and where are we now? Like what kind of the standard for the app user interface today? What people are expecting from an app when they launch it for the first time?
Very nice question. So if you think about like UX and you think about apps as well, and you think about 2008, it looks like a century ago if you think about it. We had like 500 apps, if I'm not mistaken, when the Apple Store was launched. And now we have nearly almost like 2 million apps available if you think about like Apple Store and also Google Store. So basically, I think that at the beginning when apps, they were launched, they had this thing that they wanted to replicate sometimes websites, or they wanted to replicate and mimic websites on desktop. And they weren't like very user-friendly, if you think, if you remember them, right?
Yeah, I do.
So if you think about like tactics that were used for, a user interface, there was a lot of like skeuomorphism. Skeuomorphism is basically when you try to replicate textures and real-life objects to your design. So you could see like those calendars, for example, that it looked like you were like exactly using like a calendar. So if you see now we evolved a lot for this. This was very important at the beginning, especially because if you think about a new technology that people weren't like used to, this is a very valid technique to make people more aware on how things should work and what are the actions that people should take. But nowadays that we see like how app technology and also how app user experience has been evolving, how this actually changed a lot. So if you see like apps nowadays, design has become like way more flat as well. We had like a lot of simplification of icons too. So many things are becoming like more, I would say, intuitive for the app user. I think like the first like 4 or 5 years for app developers, there was a lot of like trial and error. So many things that we were like still testing, and now we kind of already have some, I would say, good practices that we should follow in order to execute a proper app that is valuable but also useful in terms of user experience to the user.
Yeah, I think my favorite example from those pre-iOS 7 era was the podcast app. It looked like type recorder. I think even back then, for a generation that were using the app, it wasn't like obvious. So what kind of skeuomorphic idea was behind that design? But nonetheless, the podcast app looked like the type recorder, tiny one, sitting in your iPhone. What about the notion of like onboarding? Like, I don't think I can recall that notion was back then. Like these days, I can hear a lot of onboarding process. Like people start using an app, and there's got to be some kind of procedure to make it easier for them, to make it obvious, like every step. What are they doing with this app? Like, so you can take off the table any possible question. I don't think it was a big thing, several years ago. Now it's kind of a standard, right?
Exactly. So as I have mentioned, the apps, they were kind of like reproductions of like the website. So they didn't care a lot about like user experience. They just wanted to replicate what people could see on desktops. But with technology evolving, with like the behavior of the user also like changing. So if you think about how you used to use cell phones like 10, 12 years ago, it's totally different when you think about using cell phones 3, 4, or even like 3, 4 years ago, or even today. So one thing that many people actually notice is that onboarding your user in order to show the value, in order to make it clear what is behind that app, it became a very important feature. So this is something that I still see doing like the trainings. Some companies who are building apps also failing on this. They just assume that users will know how to use their apps without any kind of instructions. And usually I say that onboarding nowadays is like one of the most important features that app has to be. Why? Because it relates with what we call the wow moments. Okay, So it also shows to the user why that app is actually valuable. So what is the value behind, and why should I use that app? And this could be by what is the value proposition of that app, and why should I keep it like in my cell phone, or it could be a more feature-based onboarding, for example. So if you think about like good apps that do like very good onboardings nowadays, I have a favorite one that is Duolingo, the language app where you can learn like new languages. So to me, it has like one of the best onboardings nowadays. Because once you access Duolingo, I don't know if you had the chance to be onboarded on the Duolingo app.
I know briefly what the app is, but I never tried like to use it on a daily basis. So no, please tell me.
Yeah, so Duolingo is basically an app that you can have like micro lessons on how to learn like a new language. So before I moved to the Netherlands, I had to catch up with some Dutch, of course. Even though the Netherlands is a country that is very like English friendly, right. And I wanted to know more about like some words and things that I want to know more about the language. So I downloaded Duolingo, and in the onboarding, it's seamless because you download the app and then you just answer some questions about preferences on how you want to learn or how is your level of the language, and then they do like a quick test with you. So to assess your language level. And just after showing you and giving you like personalized options on how you want to run your learning, then they ask you to sign up and to create an account. So basically what they are doing this onboarding process is to show you the value that the app has in order to convince you to sign up. Because if you think about the conversion and the retention curve of apps nowadays, you see that after 2 or 3 days, most of the users, they uninstall the apps.
Unfortunately,
so
right.
I'm pretty sure that you also had this experience where you downloaded the app, you thought it was valuable, but once you start to use it, you didn't understand what the app was for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this happens to many apps and also businesses that actually can show the value proposition, the wow moment, as we call it, to the user right away. So this kind of onboarding that Duolingo has, it's a very good one to promote, especially this activation moment, as we call it, but also long-term retention, right? And why? Because it's showing me all of the features, how it works. It's giving me a personalized learning paths. And they only ask me to sign up after they convince me that it's actually a valuable app. So for sure, when we're talking about onboarding, I think this is one of the main, I would say, features that were incorporated in user experience in the last, let's say, 5-4 years in apps. And I still see, as I told you, many companies and many businesses, I would say, skipping these important parts.
Yeah, I see. So it's a very good example. The actual onboarding procedure can be different, but the underpinning, the major principles should be the same. Show the value right away. Make sure people do understand what the app does for him and what's the value. Once you get it, you maybe you won't need to fight him back later on, so he can get back to your app. You can win this battle on the day one. All right. Now, let's say I'm a business owner and I have an app. What should I do to make sure I'm on top of any problem my app users may experience? And hence, there's a problem I may not be aware of. And once the problem was identified, what are my actions? What are my steps to avoid it in the future?
Very good question. So I had my app myself, my business that was around an app. And one advice that I can give to business owners is always be testing, always be talking to the customers. A mistake that I also see a lot is people develop an app, they come up with assumptions inside a room or nowadays during a Zoom meeting, right? Mm-hmm. But they never talk to the customers. They never see the customers actually using the app. So they don't understand anything about how is the process of the user and how the user experience actually plays a role. So they think about features, they think about anything that is, they think that it might add value to the client, but they never ask the customers to see if something is happening. So once you start to adopt this kind of, I would say, more testing and growth hacking or growth marketing mindsets in order to test constantly, you always be anticipating problems that will be happening. So you won't be surprised by any kind of problems that might show up.
All right. So you have to be ready actually for problems, because it shouldn't be a surprise for you that actually, no matter how hard you're trying to guess the mindset of your user, it's not given, it's not guaranteed that you'll succeed in this effort. You're doing your best, but yet you have to test later to make sure that actually this is the reality. You've guessed the mindset right, and the expectations you're assuming your users have are actually real expectations, not the imaginary ones.
Exactly. So yeah, when we're talking about what we call the experiments, it's very important to do user testing. Okay, so I see again a lot of entrepreneurs and also a lot of business launching apps, but without testing since the beginning and understanding who are you talking to, what are the problems that your user has. It's fundamental if you want to build a successful user experience for your app and also for your customer. You have to understand what are the problems, what are the routines, and why in what situations actually your user is using your app. Because then you can adjust all of your UI as well to that routine, to that specific, I would say, habits that the user has. And always be testing, always be in touch with the customer and running experiments, always to try to improve this UX is fundamental to be, I would say, or to be anticipating problems that might be happening. So you'll be ahead. you won't be behind the problems.
I think I can remember, back like 5-6 years ago when I had an experience of working in an app marketing agency, doing focus group testing was a thing. So to avoid any problem in the future, to avoid this delusion when you're thinking that you've guessed the mindset right, but actually that's not the case. You're setting up the testing with this set of with a number of people who will be checking your app, its features, and reporting on their experience for a given period of time. Is it something that is actually this is what people do now? Is it still relevant?
Yes, I'm personally like a big fan of this kind of qualitative research. So doing these kind of focus groups and also doing like in-depth interviews, they're very good, I would say, resources to try to explore how your user actually is dealing with your app. But of course, nowadays, we also have some tools that can be used in order to assess, especially try to do screen recordings, for example. There are some tools that are specialized for apps in order to see how users are behaving when they're using the app, where they're clicking, where they have difficulties in order to go on with the experience. So yes, I wouldn't say that focus groups are a thing like from the past. I personally like them a lot. But for sure, there are other tools that you can embed in your app that can also bring like some of those insights for you. So they're pretty nice.
Right. I think I know what you mean. There are tools that allow you to capture the actual user experience inside the app, like every action that is taken, and give the detailed report afterwards, like how much time was spent on a specific screen, what was the it's the next best thing being actually next to the person who is trying an app, like recording his actions with an app and see what kind of possible problems can arise.
I personally ran like a lot of like those kind of like more qualitative tests, in Loco as well. And I know that those like screen recordings tools, they are very good because it can give you insights if you don't have the time to go outside and actually see your user using your app. But I always recommend actually try to see your user using the app. Why? Because then you can also see how they behave and how they use this in their natural, I would say, environment. And this is very important for user experience. So then you can think about all of the features and everything that you will develop based on the reality of your user, the reality of your customer.
Okay, now, what are some of the most common user interface mistakes you can see people do? There's a famous case in 2018. Snap changed the user interface dramatically, introducing multiple features, multiple changes in the interface that get the huge backlash from the users. So even the huge companies the size of Snap can make mistakes with the user interface. So what kind of mistakes you would like to lay out that people should avoid be doing?
All right. So I think there are like some things that we could point out over here. One thing that annoys me like very much when we are doing like this kind of research and also evaluating some apps, it's when I see like apps text, for example. So I also think that apps, they have to be intuitive and also the flow of the events when we are thinking about them, they have to be intuitive for the user. Right? Because again, there is like one principle that we have to follow when you're thinking about like UX is that we have to be as simple as possible and also be clear as possible when we are designing this to the users. There are other things that I also think are important when you are considering this. Page speed, for example. So you think about like app speed, something that you should also be aware. Usually we see like a lot of people working with design for apps in, I would say, more potent smartphones, but also you should consider, especially depending on your user, devices that might be slower. So this is also very detrimental for the user experience as well. And I think that everything that adds extra friction to your UI, it's something that also you need to bear in mind. Apps, they need to be as simple as possible. such as business, and also show the value as soon as possible to the users. Because I think this is like the key to success.
Gotcha, Daniel. Okay. Now I've got a few quick questions for you. And here we go. Are you iOS or Android person?
Good one. I was Android at the beginning, but now I think I'm totally iOS for sure.
So you switched the the platforms.
Yeah.
Was it
So I had my first.
Was it the iOS as the platform or the hardware, the iPhone itself, or both?
It was the iPhone itself. So I was a big fan of Android, but then I had the chance to have my first iPhone. I would say like 6 years ago, and then I would say it was a life-changing event for me.
I see. All right. So, do you remember your first mobile phone?
First phone, I would say it was a Nokia. Those like big ones that look like bricks that you could like throw at the wall, and they would still like keep working. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Nokia 1100 that had like that white keyboard.
Wow, I don't think I can recall that one. I think the only one I can recall 3210 because it was the most popular one. What about your favorite app now and why?
Favorite app? Let's see. Well, I think that professionally speaking, I'm a big fan of Slack in terms of usability. I like Slack very much for work. But personally speaking, the app that I like the most and I use the most, I don't know if it's like a little bit surprising, but it's Pokemon Go. So this is like, I think the app that I spend like most time nowadays. Also, I'm trying to experiment more with TikTok as well. Something that I'm trying to get like more info about, something that I'm spending more time. Especially because they have a very interesting, I would say, user experience too, on how to provide value very quickly and engage you to keep coming back. So it's a very interesting like business model as well.
All right. What about kind of the opposite question? What is there any app that you tried and your personal experience was, all that hype, it doesn't deserve it. It doesn't work for me.
Well, specifically one, I couldn't name it one, but I can tell you like about apps that I really don't like using. And apps that I really don't like using are airline apps. So I think before the pandemic, I was traveling a lot, going a lot to other countries. And when you see like some apps from big airlines, I won't mention names, but you ask yourself, what those guys were thinking when they're designing like this app, Those guys, they also use this app to go to the airport and embark. And it's impossible that they're not thinking about this UX, So this is something that annoys me a lot. I would say most of the airline apps, they are very, very bad.
Yeah, I think I can recall the same experience without naming any specific apps, but I definitely hear you. What about new app technologies that you're most excited about? What are you waiting for in apps?
Well, one technology that I think that is also very nice once we start like developing this more in depth is AR. So as I just mentioned to you, like Pokemon Go is a big thing for me. And I think that AR has like a lot of possibilities. So integrating like the real world around us also with the app, I think this is going to be like a game changer for user experience for apps. So now I was actually trying to buy a couch. The stores were closed. And I don't know if you know, but there is IKEA has also an app with AR. So you can basically put a couch on your room. So you can see exactly how it will fit in your room. And I think this is actually a big game changer, especially if you're talking about retail, right? So it allows like a lot of possibilities to engage users during the journey, during the experience, and also like to make them, I would say, take decisions quicker. And also, I think in other technologies, the more extensive usage of like data, especially if you're talking about machine learning on apps. And again, for those big industries, for retail, for e-commerce, I think this is also going to be like a big changer in a few years. It's not going to take a lot.
All right, got you. Actually, that was the last question. So before I let you go, how people can know more about what you do?
Well, you can always access Growth Tribe website, so growthtribe.nl. There you see more about the work we do by educating individuals and companies in growth hacking and how to improve their business and how to scale their business. And also, you're always free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you type my name, Daniel Ushida on LinkedIn, find me, and I will happily join you for a virtual coffee if you want.
Cool. Great. Thanks a lot for your time and coming on our podcast, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And that was Daniel Ushida, Growth Hacker at Growth Tribe Academy. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. Once you subscribe, you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review and comment. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. See you next week.
This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data, and analysis over at businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.